Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, Disney, Warner Brothers. Long ago, the four channels lived together in harmony. Then, everything changed when Disney took over. Only Avatar: The Last Airbender, master of all four mediums, could stop them. But when the world needed the series most, it ended. 15 long years have passed, and the audience has learned of a new series, an Avatar adaptation on Netflix. And although its bending effects are great, its writers have a lot to learn before they're ready to revive a series. I'm Yo Hotman, I'm Firelord Fusco, and we are back for the third episode review of Avatar: The Last Airbender Netflix edition. We are digging into episode 3, Omashu, today. I was going to go further, but I felt like the way that this episode was handled was actually pretty well done. There were a lot of things in here that I think I wanted to focus on to kind of talk about what went right and what they did really well here to show that we might have a show. We might have a really good show coming out of the struggle bus that was episode 1 and part of episode 2. My last episode review was a little rough. There were a lot of things that I think I was focusing in on that were different and that were, that got changed, that impact the story in kind of a negative way. However, there were moments in episode 2 that I think were actually really well done. I've changed up, once again, the structure of the episode and how I'm going to go about reviewing this. And so I've kind of gone through and done a step-by-step scene editing thing rather than focusing strictly on this character or this character or this plot point or this plot point. And I think that is going to flow a lot better this time. So without further ado, we're going to jump into episode 3. So let me know if you agree, disagree, like, dislike. So go ahead and like and subscribe if you wouldn't mind. And let's get into it. So episode 3 starts out, we start out in the Fire Nation, which, again, I said this in the last episode. I'm going to say it again here. Anytime this show steps away from the source material while remaining faithful to the source material, the fluidness and the flow of those scenes always are significantly better and significantly higher quality than when they are trying too hard to add some semblance of relatability in scenes that they think we want to be the exact same. So the moments where they stick to that too closely is where they really struggle. In this scene, we end up in the Fire Nation, and there's a Fire Nation revolution, which I think is a really cool story beat that they're adding in here, that not everybody, even in the Fire Nation, agrees with the war. Even the Fire Nation civilians in this show are showing we are done with the fighting. We are done with losing our friends and our family because of a war that the Fire Lord thinks is important. So it starts out with that. We get introduced to a small cluster of Fire Nation revolutionists who want to sneak in and kill Fire Lord Ozai. And it sounds at first like they have a plan, but they don't. Moving forward in the episode, the gist of their plan seems to end up being, we're going to sneak directly into the throne room and kill him. Not with firebending, but with little handheld axes. They're going to go after, essentially, in this era of the Avatar, the most powerful man on the planet. They are going to go kill him with a hand axe. So, okay. Which, interestingly enough, we then get our introduction to Azula. Now, I knew from the get-go, seeing Azula, seeing her actor and who was cast as her before all of this, I knew it was her as soon as she walked in, and she was masquerading as a revolutionist, and they sneak in, and first of all, why? What? Why did they feel like they had to let these guys into the castle to trap them? Unless it was specifically Fire Lord Ozai wanting to do the honors and kill them. So, anyway, so they meet Fire Lord Ozai, and then they start talking about the fact that the Avatar is back. Azula doesn't think that this is true. Ozai then shows the note he got at the end of episode 2 from Zhao saying, hey, I've witnessed the Avatar in action. He is back, he is alive, and he is here. And then Ozai sounds impressed with Zuko, which is interesting because I don't think it would be good or bad necessarily for his character, because in the first season, we didn't see a lot of Ozai. We didn't get a lot of his character. We just knew that he was this ominous figure, you know, pulling the strings of the Fire Nation and running this war, and then, you know, tried to deep fry his son's eyeball because he actually cares about his citizens. So, he seems impressed. Azula does not seem impressed. And that's kind of where that ends. We go into our next scene. So, anyway, before we go into the next scene, like I said, I thought that scene, though its execution was a little lacking, it was a good ad. I thought it was a good way to, you know, one, continue to give Ozai a little bit of screen time and dig into some of the happenings within the Fire Nation in this show, as well as gives us a good early point of introduction to Azula, which I think in the original show, the first time we see Azula is in a flashback where she's smiling at Zuko getting his eye melted, you know, getting in his Agni Kai. But then we don't actually meet her until season 2. So I think this is a good way to kind of bring her in. But anyway, we jump then to the next scene where Katara is using the water-bending scroll. So, I said in the last episode that I think that they did well finding a way to include the scroll without including the pirate episode. And the reason I said that is because the stealing is not the only growing point tied to the scroll for Katara. So, I think that there is still some good character growth that could come from the scroll. However, they seem to have already botched that too. So, in the show, after they get the scroll, Katara tries to teach Aang some basics about waterbending. And she does this while also struggling to comprehend the stuff on the scroll. Okay? So, she's practicing with the scroll, struggling to do the water whip. That is a direct callback to the show. She was struggling with the exact same move. Aang comes up to give her some pointers, and where the shows deviate is, once again, conflict is removed from the entire situation. Aang goes into his teacher mode, which he is, again, Aang's character is written extremely differently, and so it was really frustrating to see the way that they've kind of botched that, because Katara gets upset and becomes a bit jealous of Aang and his ability to quickly comprehend how to waterbend and how to try to do what he's doing. Katara gets angry at him, blows up, and the character growth doesn't come from that. It comes from Katara being able to recognize that she messed up and then work on reconciling things. So not only do we get a single character growth moment through Katara learning how to reconcile and take responsibility for her own selfish mistakes, we get a moment that also grows her and Aang's relationship. They grow closer because of that conflict, because they're able to reconcile. And so once again, growth and the reconciling for both of them is ripped away. And that again brings us to another situation where we are left with very little moments to tie in as character building and team building moments to really make us believe that this group of random kids that are together have a reason to care about each other and really want to stick together. It seems like what they're going for is that they are kind of taking away any signs of Aang being interested in Katara. Which, it's too early, I think, for me to say if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's too early for me to say if that's definitely what they're doing. It wouldn't shock me with the age difference of the actors within the show. But that is sort of a frustrating piece that is then kind of taken away. I'm not going to get into all that. You know, I feel like if they felt like it was going to be a problem, they should have found somebody older for Aang or younger for Katara to kind of put them a little more in line with that, so that when that romantic piece starts to become involved, it wouldn't have been an issue. You know, because I think Katara is close to turning 18, or her actor is close to turning 18, I mean. Aang's is not. So, moving on. So then we go into the next scene where they are traveling. I believe they're traveling to Omashu, but I don't remember exactly why. I should have gone back and looked at, you know, what the reasoning was of why exactly they were going to Omashu. But then we get a scene straight out of the Eastern Air Temple. Aang sees the gliders, or a glider, and that then drives them to go over there. So we get tied into, and I'm going to go over this later, but the episode is obviously about Omashu, and now we're getting tossed, oh hey, also Eastern Air Temple. So I will go into more of that in a minute, but that was definitely something that, you know, I think anybody watching goes, wait, hold on. Why are the gliders in Omashu of all places? Scene 4, Zuko and Iroh and Zhao. So Zhao is, like he said at the end of episode 2, is sticking around and has become a part of like Zuko's crew or entourage or posse or whatever you want to call them. And he's really pushing to like contact people and let them know, hey, the Avatar's alive. Which is just odd. It's an odd dynamic to see, but I don't think it's necessarily a good or bad thing. I think it's them. They have to find ways to make things different and also make things line up and make things work. And so I think having Zhao be more a part of things with Zuko and trying to pull strings behind the scenes, I think is fine if they do it well enough. Anybody who was a fan of Commander Zhao in the show, however, is probably going to have some issues with it, because Zhao is not a very memorable character in this. And he just feels sort of directionless. Zuko, however, I feel like in this scene is handled very well. So Zuko is given some depth in this scene because Zhao leaves and he turns. So, oh gosh, what's his name? Lieutenant something. The lieutenant comes in and tells Zhao, hey, your ship's here. And Zhao says, great, perfect timing. I'm getting out of here. And then Zuko sighs, exasperated, and is that the word for it? I don't know. He sighs, says something like, I really don't like him, talking about Zhao. And the lieutenant starts chiming in. And Zuko lays into him. Like, I didn't ask your opinion. Get the heck out of here. We're not playing this game. You don't do that. And even Iroh was like, well, he was just trying to help. And he goes, well, he was talking down on a commanding officer. And then we get a great line that I think really sets Zuko up in this show as a solidly written character. And he said, I put it word for word, we are Fire Nation, even out here, especially out here. And I thought that line was brilliant because it does really well to say, even in exile, Zuko is still trying to be the prince and cling on to some sense of honor, which that's my other note. Are they just really fighting to avoid Zuko ever saying anything about his honor? Maybe to like avoid the meme, I guess, but anyway, point is, I feel like Zuko is handled far better than any character so far in this show. Zuko's writing for his character, his actor is on point. He is handled very well for the entire thing so far. And I've really enjoyed watching his character. And that's not just because I'm a Zuko fanatic. My handle is Firelord Fusco, which I've changed certain letters in my last name so that it also holds, you know, it phonetically can be said the same way, but it's, you know, a Z and a K and that sort of thing. So, point is, Zuko is really well written, and I promise I'm not biased about it. So next, they arrive in Omashu, and then I don't know if any of you took note of this. I'm sure some of you took note of this. I am not the only one that probably went, wait a minute. Aang mentions that Omashu is set atop a living mountain. So, is it just me, or are we getting some hints already towards like Aang knowing something about the cave system underground and the whole Tale of Two Lovers thing? They then snuck in with some guy on a cart, and then Aang disappeared. That's why I took note of that. They snuck in with some dude on a cart, and Aang vanished. Sokka was in the back. Katara was up front. Aang was nowhere to be seen. Nowhere. They get into the city, and Aang once again sees the glider and takes off running after it. So already we're getting two storylines that they've kind of meshed together here. And I was very hesitant about how that was going to turn out, trying to mesh two of those stories together like that. And then Aang, we finally see some recklessness from Aang. Because even though he's supposed to be very graceful and, you know, hardly ever, like, fall down, sometimes he runs into people when he's not paying attention. He becomes clumsy. He becomes reckless because he's chasing after something. And that's what happened. He was knocking people over left and right. He was pushing people out of the way. We get to see him being reckless as he's chasing after this glider. And we get to see the Cabbage Man. The Cabbage Man makes an appearance, but doesn't stay the line. So I thought that was handled okay. Again, the whole episode seems to be flowing decently right now, but they don't seem very focused on anything. Like they don't seem to have like a real reason to be there, except for chasing down the glider, which I think was a interesting way to go about it. And then, yeah, and so then Aang catches up with Teo in Omashu. And everything explodes. So yeah, everything explodes. There's some talk about apparently Fire Nation spies have made it into Omashu and are now being terrorists and like blowing things up. So they meet Sai, and we get a look at Sokka's knack for tinkering starting to show up. And I will say, sorry, just a moment. Okay. I will say, that was handled very well. And then I felt like the set design for Sai's home and the way that the rest of Omashu just in general looks was really good. It was way better than what I had expected, especially for a show that is so prominently green screen. And I know there's a lot of people that were complaining about that, and that leads to it feeling a lot like a play and yada yada. But what did you expect? Yes, when they're out in, the woods or whatever, like when they're out in the forests, yeah, go find a forest. But when you're dealing with scenes like this, I felt like it was handled as well as it could be. They then go to leave, even after Teo and Sai tell them, like, hey, yeah, Firebenders and Fire Nation are just blowing everybody up. They're like, oh yeah, we gotta go. Sorry. And then Aang stops to reconsider and wants to help people because they see people. You hear people in the background all like, we got to stop the bleeding. We got to do this. Like, they're doing their best to make it seem like they are still cleaning up people and bodies from this bomb. Okay? And Katara is not remotely concerned. She does not seem at all worried about the people of Omashu. She is actually the first person when Aang's like, maybe we stick around. Maybe we stay. Maybe we do something. She is one of the first people who's like, well, didn't Kyoshi tell you have to go to the North Pole? It's, sorry? Like, that's a Sokka call to make. Like, I would see first season Sokka saying that. Like, we can't do anything for these people. Right now, we need to go to the North Pole where we know we can do something. And Katara being like, we need to help these people. We need to do something here. Because we literally run into that scenario in season 3. Sokka's like, no, we got to get to the rendezvous point for the invasion. When they get to the fish village. Painted Lady is the episode. And Katara's like, no, we got to do something about this. We got to help these people. And Sokka's like, no, we got to go do this. We got to go take care of this. We can't do anything for them. And so for it to be flipped and for Katara to be like, yeah, well, we need to go here. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I don't know. We get a scene. Oh, and then we get introduced to May and Ty Lee, which they were all right. They weren't bad. They weren't good, but they weren't bad. They were. I will say my had me genuinely laughing for a minute because she really leaned into the why do we have to do this and. So that I enjoyed that. We get Zuko and Iroh in Omashu. Not much to say there. They're just kind of there looking for Aang. obviously the first round they were not in Omashu during this, I think. I don't remember where they were during this part. And then we find out that Carp Man, the guy who helped sneak them in, is supposed to be Jet, which now that his hair is all fluffed out, like I can see it. But we get the cringiest moment of the entire episode with Katara's, "Who are you?" And it just, oh man, literal like shivers up my spine, painful cringe. We see Sai meeting with the spies, and then we get a pretty solid action scene. We get it's some solid pacing, some solid choreography. The movements look fluid. The effects look great. Pipsqueak straight up kills a man. Just absolutely devastates this man's spine. And just wipes him out. There's no world where I believe that man is standing back up and walking that off. He is dead, and I'm pretty certain that at the end of that scene, Pipsqueak just drags his body away. Oh my gosh! Oh, that was too good. That was solid. They got this weird blocking moment where it really... If you don't want it to look like a play, don't block it like a play and have everybody panning to the camera. And what I mean by that is everybody standing where they're facing towards the camera in a way. Like they might be at an angle, but they're still where you can mostly see them from the camera's point of view. Nobody's showing any part of their back, essentially. That was just really weird and just an odd moment of just like, yeah, hey, we're all here, cool, woohoo. And then I noticed this doesn't matter. This literally doesn't matter. I enjoyed this. Pipsqueak is literally, his armor is just a shield on his chest. That's it. He's got a vest on, and underneath this massive behemoth of a shield that he's just wearing as a chest plate. And I think that did really good to show that, like, these are children. They are not going to have access to weapons. They're not going to have access to any of this stuff. And so costume design, I think, gets a win for that one, as weird as it looked. They get a win for that one of just putting him straight up just in a shield as a chest plate. We then go to Sokka and Sai making the lid for the war balloon. And then the conversation shifts to them implying that Sokka is being pushed to be a warrior instead of pursuing his dreams or passion. Like, that is the implication that I was understanding from that conversation of like, oh, well, my dad doesn't like this stuff because he's a warrior and I got to be a warrior too. And then Sai's like, well, you can, chase your you could chase your dreams and passion. Like, we have enough warriors, blah, 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 blah. That Sokka wants to fight the Fire Nation. I don't know who missed the whole first episode of the show where Sokka constantly talks about wanting to knock some firebenders' heads loose. But he wants to be a warrior. He wants to fight. Nobody's forcing Sokka into this role of being a warrior. That is what he is supposed to want to do. And you are shifting his character in a way that is going to make people frustrated. Exhibit A. That is just not, it's just not a good change. It's not a good change to his character. It's not a good change to the implications of Hakoda. Like, it's just not good. It's not okay. And it's extremely frustrating to see them. It is possible to be a warrior and be innovative and be intelligent. Nobody was trying to force Sokka into doing only one of those things. Nobody. And it brought to light, even just now, I'm realizing that their implications throughout the entire show is that Sokka was assigned like a chore, that he's supposed to take care of the tribe. And that is not the way that Hakoda leaves them in the show. The way that Hakoda leaves them in the show is more of a, you have a purpose here. You don't have to go with us. You have a purpose here. It was not him saying, Sokka, you're in charge. If anybody gets hurt, it's on you. No, he's just giving his son a reason to stay behind and cope with being separated from his dad. It is Hakoda being a good dad, not trying to force his son into a role he's not ready for. And the implications that they are giving with Sokka so far is indicating otherwise. And I will throw hands with anybody who tries to portray Hakoda as a bad dad. Looking at you, Netflix. Anyway, we then go... I'm jumping right into... We then go to the hideout of the Freedom Fighters. That is literally... It's oh my gosh. It's just... They went to the Ren Fair ropes course. I have said this. I have sent this message to friends. I have told numerous people this. That is the first thing that came to mind. Was like, I'm pretty sure I saw that same ropes course at the Ren Fair this year. Like, what? And then Jet's like, oh yeah, this works. Like, nobody's been able to track us here. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Even the background is an expanse of trees. Like, it's wide open fields, and just, there's trees popping up randomly. Like, it is very open. I don't know, like, somebody could be a mile away, and if the trees are separated that much, you're going to be like, hey, you see that ropes course over there? You think maybe some kids would hide out over there? Like, maybe the guys that are bombing everything? Anyway, spoilers. Sorry, we'll get into that part later. So yeah, so the hideout makes zero sense. They could have just as well thrown that out and never had to deal with that again. Never had to even look into the hideout. But I will say, my first major note is that it's become apparent at this point. You have Jet, Eastern Air Temple, and Omashu all rolled up into one story beat. Which, at the moment, they're all kind of separate stories right now, happening individually. There's no overlap yet. So, at this point, I had made the note that, like, that's what we're looking at. We have looked at a change of structure for the episode, and they've taken numerous story beats and kind of applied all of them into this one episode. After that, however, we go to... Zuko and Iroh in Omashu. Didn't I already say that? Yes. No. So the other part was them heading to Omashu. My heart rates up because of how... Anyway. Zuko and Iroh are in Omashu. Zuko finds out that he sees the explosion, or the rubble from the explosion, and asks Iroh what's going on, and Iroh tells him, hey, some of the Fire Nation have begun using, like, terrorism and other guerrilla tactics to make the Earthbenders lose their will to fight. Note number one. Not everybody in the Fire Nation army is a Firebender. Not everybody in the Earth Kingdom army is an Earthbender. Not everybody in the Water Nation, or the Water Tribe army is a Waterbender. But their use of Bender seems to indicate otherwise. Every time they're talking about, like, a soldier, they're a Firebender. And it's like, the dude's got a stick. How is he a Firebender? Anyway, so we get a really cool moment where, once again, we are establishing Zuko as a very straightforward, honorable guy. And he is really upset about the fact that anybody in the Fire Nation would utilize terrorism during the war. We then get scene where Azula is writing to Zhao and being like, hey, you know, be my informant on my brother and tell me what's going on with him in the Avatar. And Zhao's like, cool, we made the big game. And I'm like, I don't know what that means, but sure, man. So I'm wondering if that's how he's going to get promoted into Admiral, because by the end of it, he's no longer Commander, he's Admiral Zhao. So I don't even know what to say about Zhao's character in this. It is so weird. It is so different that I don't even know how to respond to it. It's a guy with the same name. It's not the same character at all. We get a sibling conflict, everybody. We get a conflict with the siblings. And it could have been so much better than it was. Katara is like, hey, this is what happened. Aang's uncovered that the guy in the cart, he doesn't know it's Jet. The guy in the cart is behind the bombings. Katara shows up and is like, well, hey, you know, he's not bombing anybody. He's trying to take down the Fire Nation spies. And it's this classic... It's exactly what happened in the cavern episode where they're walking through the canyon. Where, you know, Katara goes with one side, Sokka goes with the other, and they get two sides of the same story, and they're like, this is the bad guy, or this is the bad guy. And it turns out everybody sucks. That's the moral of the story, everybody. Roll credits, go home. Everybody's awful. Oh, that's too real, unfortunately. But anyway, so we get this conflict where they're arguing about who's really the bad guy here. And plot twist, they're both horrible people. To an extent. They're both fighting what they think is the fight that they need to fight. I need to sound more open-minded to what they're trying to do. But to be entirely honest with you, blowing up an entire building to try to prove your point is probably not the best way to go about it. And then selling war secrets to the people that are trying to invade and murder everybody also isn't the right way to go about it. So, however, we start to get the overlap. The story beats start to intertwine, and they are doing very well. Katara leaves to confront Jet, and Jet is like, yeah, we watched Sai sell his secrets to the, or not sell his secrets, but give the secrets to the Fire Nation spy. We know he's a bad guy. We're going to take him out. So Jet's target this time is not an entire city. It is Sai. And Sai is heading to meet with Boomy. So killing Sai means taking out numerous of innocent people. Numerous amounts of innocent people. And I think that that is a very good way of tying everything together. You have Sai, who thinks he's trying to do the right thing by selling secrets. You have Jet, who thinks he's doing the right thing by trying to rid the kingdom of this person who's causing all this, you know, conflict and you know, going along with the enemy. I think that they did very well to take numerous story points here and tie them together in a way that functionally works as a story. And I, aside from the delivery, the acting, some of the blocking, I felt like it was a good episode. And we're not even done yet. So the next thing we see is Katara and Sokka and Aang are all, hey, we have to go stop Jet, or we have to go find Sai. Jet planted a bomb on him. He took some blasting jelly and put it into a case, and then him and the Duke and Pipsqueak switched it out in transit. So now Sai's walking around with a bomb that's going to blow up a bunch of people. So they go to confront him, and then Zuko runs into Aang. So we get a Zuko-Aang fight. Katara and Sokka go off on their own way to go find Sai while Aang takes care of Zuko. And this was such a well-done scene. The choreography was phenomenal. I don't know if anybody else got this vibe. I don't know if anybody else is old enough to get this vibe who'd be watching this video. But the choreography for Aang in this fight was, I felt reminiscent of like an old Jackie Chan movie. like rush hour style fighting. He's, you know, very kind of just going with the flow. Whatever's happening is happening. And then he's using what he can around him. He starts throwing plates at Zuko while Zuko uses a stick, or he breaks a tent or something, a stand, and he uses the arm of it, or the pole, a staff, essentially. He gets a hand staff. And it's just really well done. It's just very well done. There's this really great middle of the conflict where Zuko gets a good hit in on Aang, and then this lady comes charging at Zuko and is just like, how dare you hit a child? I thought that was very good, well placed. That was a great moment. The camera work in the fabric tent was masterful. That was phenomenal. It looked great. It was an awesome scene. That was amazing. And then we go into a bit of dialogue where Zuko and Aang start talking, and Aang lets loose, hey, you've been chasing me for 3 years, and Zuko's like, you have my book! And then Zuko throws his... He's been avoiding using firebending, which I think was great. I think that was a good choice. It really played into the choreography of the fight, instead of just the effects, which, you know, can be really hard to put into a fight scene because the actors can't see that. And I know that's going to be a really difficult thing to do moving forward, is involving these bending moments in fights that are very fluid and martial art like, without it just being a here's a rock, or here's some water, or here's a fireball. But anyway, so Zuko throws his first fire, throws fire because he's angry. He firebends, and he hits the cabbage cart, and we finally get the cabbage line. Sokka and Katara then go up the transit, the Earth Kingdom transit slide things. I don't know what you want to call them, the post, whatever. I don't think anybody paid attention to how that system works, because that's not how gravity functions or how earthbending functions. If there was somebody like behind the cart pushing them, yeah, sure, whatever. But then they're going to stop as soon as they get in the cart. Point is, weird, but fine. It's a throwaway moment. It's okay. They get to Sai, and they find Bumi. And Bumi's lack of presence aside in the Omashu episode, I'm sure we're going to maybe get that. Because at the end of this episode, Aang gets captured. He's got a weird design. But the only thing I want to mention in this moment is why is an important, probably top secret meeting to hand off war information being held outside. And not just outside, anybody could get there. There are people walking around all over the place. Why is this handoff happening outside? My only question. I'm not for it, not against it. Just weird. Weird choice. But they could have had Longshot shooting into a window. That would have been fine, but still. Point is, they save the day. Katara water bends, and the flaming arrow hits her water, puts out the fire. Nobody blows up. But it makes me feel like so far this show is much more about Katara than it is about the Avatar. So I'm hoping that changes soon. And then the last thing to note is they went a step further. So we have Omashu, Eastern Air Temple, and Jet all wrapped up into one story beat. And they went even further to give us the setup for Iroh's capture. So we were going to get that moment where Zuko is tracking Iroh, because he sacrifices himself. Instead of Iroh being captured in the middle of nowhere, Iroh is now captured inside of Omashu. And I'm really interested to see how that goes. And so everything else aside, the weird acting deliveries, the odd set designs in some places, I felt like so far, this has been the strongest episode that they've had. It's really sad, though, because we're continuing this trend of there are so many moments where the actors don't seem to have any real control over what they're saying or doing, and it all feels extremely robotic and unnatural. And that's going to ruin a lot. If that wasn't an issue, I feel like we would have a seriously good adaptation. Because not only did they include numerous story beats, they did so in a very good way. In a very well put together and well maintained fashion. So again, once again, we're just at a place where the only thing keeping it from being good is the fact that not everybody's on the same page. So anyway, that'll do it for episode 3. We'll jump into episode 4 later. So again, let me know your thoughts. Tell me, what did you like about the show? What did you not like about the show? What did you think was done right? What did you think was done wrong? What are some things that maybe I'm overreacting about that you think doesn't matter? What are some things that I didn't mention that you think absolutely, ruins the premise for you? So tell me what your thoughts are. Interact. Let me know. I'll try to address them if I can. Otherwise, I will see you guys for the review of episode 4 later. Bye!